Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Beatrice Canelli, and I'm a PhD candidate at the School of Advanced Study at the University of London. And in today's presentation, which is titled Social Media Archives, Identifying Opportunities and Limitations to Historical Research Using Social Media Corpora, I would like to talk about some considerations emerged from the analysis of some of the data collected through an online survey that was conducted as part of my PhD research, which is titled Archiving Social Media, a comparative study of the practices, obstacles, and opportunities related to the development of social media archives. And just to provide a little bit of a background, my PhD study focuses on memory institutions that are either currently archiving or planning to archive content from different social media platforms. So the intent of my PhD research is to capture through interviews the first-hand experience of web archivists and curators in order to understand what has been achieved so far in terms of social media archiving practices, and also identify new challenges posed by an ever-increasing complexity and constant emerging of new social media platforms. In the last couple of decades, social media has become one of the main ways for people to interact online and participate to a global, ongoing public discussion about contemporary events. Social media has and continues to define the 21st century, becoming an essential source of information for the interpretation and contextualization of present times. And certainly recent political events or health crises have made even more clear the central role social media has been playing in facilitating, for instance, the circulation of information or even reporting from war zones. Moreover, content created and shared on social media constitutes not only an essential primary source for historians who want to study our contemporary history, but also a means to reflect, remember, and build upon the past, contributing to the making of our cultural heritage and memory and collective memory. Social media's cultural and historical value has been recognized by a wide range of cultural heritage institutions worldwide, and memory institutions are more and more seeking to preserve the content shared on these platforms in order to ensure its safeguard and accessibility in the long term. However, social media archiving initiatives at an institutional level are still quite few in number. And so the aim of this paper is to offer a review of the latest social media archiving initiatives worldwide, consequently highlighting gaps that may affect and need to be taken into consideration when approaching such important corpora for historical research. And by analyzing the data of the survey, I will also address imbalances and opportunities that may impact historical research using social media corpora preserved by national memory institutions. The data, as for the survey, the data collection was conducted between October 2021 and February 2022. The survey was circulated via email using mailing lists such as the IPC Web Curators mailing list, just to mention one, with the aim of reaching as many institutions as possible that may be archiving or thinking about archiving social media. I also sent additional direct emails to memory institutions that mentioned on their social media archiving activities, either on their websites or on their collection development policies. The survey was also circulated via Twitter, as is the social media that researchers and web archivists seem to be using the most to communicate about their work or research. So in the end, I received a total of 33 responses from institutions at different stages of development of their social media collections. And here's the map that comprises all the countries in which are located institutions that are, as mentioned, either collecting or planning to collect social media content. And to those 33 institutions, I also added some institutions based on desk research, which are located in Sweden, China, Ukraine, and South Korea. And these are the ones that on the map are showed in yellow. As you can see, there are two countries in blue, Italy and Lithuania, which are the only two institutions that completed the survey, stating that in their country, there are currently no plans to start archiving social media at an institutional level. Of course, I'm sure there are many other institutions across the globe that the survey hasn't captured, but I believe that the results still provide an overall indication of the geographical distribution of such initiatives across the globe, and also highlight gaps and underrepresented areas. As you can see from the map, the geographical distribution of social media archiving initiatives is mainly concentrated in the global north, and especially most of the initiatives are located in the European area, in US and Canada. Interestingly, there are some plans to develop, for instance, a social media archive in Singapore and also in China, where the National Library announced in 2019 they would start archiving posts from the Sina Weibo platform, which is one of the most popular social media platforms in the country. In the survey, I also wanted to capture the stage the participating social media archiving initiatives were at. Participants were asked to either indicate whether the project was a long-term project, a pilot fixed-term project, or they were still in the planning phase. And I thought that capturing this information was essential to help paint a clearer representation of the current social media archiving panorama, and also get an idea of what we can expect to see in the years to come in terms of new emerging initiatives. As showed in the slide, more than half of the respondents are institutions that are running a long-term projects, while the remainder is distributed between pilot fixed-term projects and still in the planning, and 7 of them are still in the planning phase. It is worth noting how pilot short-term projects will not always, unfortunately, translate in long-term projects, raising questions related to the fate of the content collected during the trial period, and especially in terms of making that material accessible to researchers who might want to use it for research. As for those that are still in the planning phase, some of them appear to be either waiting for further fundings to start curating or continue to archive content for what can be envisioned as a long-term preservation activity, or others are instead reorganizing themselves after problematic attempts at archiving social media, and now are working towards finding the best solution for them to start archiving social media content again. Another interesting information captured from the survey was the year in which these institutions were established. As you can see, apart from the longest running and well-established ones that have been created around 2007 and 2012, in the past 4 to 5 years, there has been a rapid increase of archiving initiatives across the globe, which are focusing, of course, on social media content. And these are, and especially between 2017 and 2022, and most of these institutions have been seem to be have been established in response to recent historical crises, such as the COVID pandemic, especially the COVID pandemic, and this further demonstrates the cultural and historical value of discussions happening on these sites, and the unique content this unique content that documents events on an unprecedented scale. Among the data collected from the survey, the type of content archived by these social media archiving initiatives is particularly relevant to understand the extent and the sources that there are and will be available to historians and researchers at national archiving institutions. The information collected from the survey confirmed what already reported in previous studies, and that is the tendency for social media archiving initiatives to archive predominantly content from Twitter, followed by Facebook and Instagram. Some institutions preserve or plan to preserve also material from WhatsApp and TikTok, which has recently drawn the attention of an increasing number of member institutions because of the popularity that these platform gained around 2020 and 2021. Some institutions also preserve content from YouTube, Vimeo, Flickr, Tumblr, and Telegram, and especially Telegram is one of those platforms that are not frequently archived yet. But for instance, Telegram has played a central role in the circulation of information, especially during the first few months of the war in Ukraine. And indeed, it has become the subject of a very interesting and recent archiving initiatives operated by the Center for Urban History in Lviv in Ukraine. So based on the data that I just illustrated, there are some limits and opportunities that for historical research that can be highlighted. First of all, the geographical distribution of social media archiving initiatives seem to reflect those imbalances and gaps that are the product of economic, political, and ICT divide. And it is worth also noting that the location of social media archiving initiatives illustrated in this presentation may have been affected, of course, by the dissemination strategy adopted for the survey, and especially the use of the English language for the survey, which might have excluded a part of social media archiving initiatives existing in parts of the globe that maybe are not familiar with this language. Furthermore, it's important to note how the numerous challenges related to the collection of certain platforms, especially Facebook, which is creating a lot of problems to many different memory institutions, and the maturity of born digital archiving initiatives in the US and in Europe, coupled with the national focus of most collections, often shaped by legal deposit regulations, have been determining the type and consistency with which specific social media platforms are currently being archived, leading, of course, to the formation of inevitable gaps in the collections available and what historians will be able to study, especially in the future. Besides, it is important to bear in mind that not all social media sites are popular in the same way in all countries, and there are other social media platforms which are only used on certain parts of the globe which are not currently archiving social media. And this situation certainly raises questions regarding the real extent of the platforms that are currently excluded by the archiving efforts made by the Global North, as well as questions about the completeness and representativeness of the collective memory preserved so far, especially in a context such as that of social media, which is highly ephemeral and with a rate of content disappearance of almost 10% each year. So if we are lucky enough, we will have fragments of content shared on the less archived platforms or those that are not archived at all from other sources. But the question remains regarding the preservation and representation, for instance, of silences, marginalized voices, and content produced in areas of the globe, especially the Global South, which is still relevant to study events that transcend the Global North national borders. So in order to try and fill in the gaps that exist in institutional corpora, researchers can, of course, count, for instance, on an increasing number of amateur non-official archives online, which represent an opportunity to get a much completer and more representative image of social media phenomena happening on social media, especially among underrepresented communities, while also ensuring that ensuring also the persistence of content that might not be available anymore on social media platforms. But still, these sites are subject to the same risks and ephemerality issues as any other website online, if not properly captured. So the risk is always there. And I would like to conclude by pointing out the importance of knowing the extent of the gaps and the incompleteness of the corpora historians are working with, and also the importance for memory institutions to make available documentation that clearly explains the criteria on which selection is based. Engaging critically with social media archives and how this came into being is something essential, as curation choices, of course, have a profound impact on what and why some things have been archived rather than others. And this information is essential for researchers to understand the biases and gaps existing within the data they are working with. And in this sense, I would like to stress the importance to talking and reaching out to web curators and archivists that are working on developing the social media collections at national archiving institutions that you as researchers want to work with or are working with, as they are the only ones who may provide you with a comprehensive knowledge of the selection criteria adopted, the reasons behind certain gaps in collections, and also it might be an opportunity also to develop collaborations and partnerships aimed to bridging those gaps. So thank you for listening. And if you scan the QR code, you will find the bibliography and all the links to the social media archiving initiatives mentioned in the presentation. Thank you.